Great. So how did you get started with medical cannabis?
What was interesting is that I started in the healthcare industry very, very young. I was such a young student at Howard University, and I had a community of women that I knew personally that were impacted by breast cancer. And so I decided that I would focus my undergraduate work on breast cancer research, specifically the BRCA1 gene. And then as I studied cancer more and more, I decided when I went to graduate school, I would focus on prostate cancer metastasis to bone. So I've always been a biomedical researcher. And during my work, what I really found was that cannabis was a therapeutic, benefit for patients with cancer. And I started to do the research there when I quickly realized that there was a lack of research. And unfortunately, my advisors and my educators were like, we don't want you to study cannabis. It's illegal, and the nature of it, with the impact that it's had on the African American community, they were like, just go a different direction. But that's when I really was exposed to the healthcare benefits of medical cannabis.
It's great. So you started National Holistics in 2015, I believe, and then you expanded your footprint to Hilaria Holistic Healthcare, which partners with Southern University, which is one of two cultivation processing facilities in the state of Louisiana. Can you kind of tell us a little about that journey you went on?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing is that I've always had a passion for education. And after leaving corporate America, I decided that I would definitely go back into academia. And in my ventures back at academia, I am a two-time Howard University graduate. So I went back there and became the director of STEM education. Now, I had multiple grants, NIH grants, Department of Energy grants, and what was important with me was that I really focused on meaningful work and work that I had to help students in the STEM industries. So I had partnered with Southern University with the Department of Energy grant to help outreach efforts from K through 12 to help bring students into the college industry in the state of Louisiana. And naturally, when I pivoted over into the cannabis industry, I maintained all those relationships. So my relationship with Southern started in the academic sense, in that community outreach sense, but it just started to pivot more in cannabis, where in 2015, I offered internships and scholarships to students at Southern University, which evolved into our relationship today as Alera Holistic Healthcare, when they were able to select a vendor to actually produce cannabis for their university.
Oh, that's great. Can you kind of give us an overview of how medical cannabis works and the treatment opportunities? I know like a later thing, we're interested in hearing about is like, how does someone even go about if getting medical cannabis too?
Yeah, definitely. So it is, very interesting how medical cannabis works. I think people think that just one strain of cannabis works for everything. What people don't know, or patients don't know, that there's different strains. There's thousands and thousands of different strains that have what we have known as cannabinoids. Most people know the cannabinoids to be THC or CBD, but there's over 140 different cannabinoids that work on our cell cycling system to make us have a sense of well-being and balance in our lives. And in conjunction with that, the plant itself has not only cannabinoids, but terpene compositions. People always say, what are terpenes? Like, I don't know what that is. And it's really simple. They're essential oils. We see them naturally occurring in all types of plants. So if you think about a lemon, you think about the terpene limonene. It's what gives its characteristic smell. It's natural benefits such as a natural antidiuretic as well as an antidepressant. So if you put that in conjunction with these cannabinoids, you're really producing some dynamic medicine. And so with that being said, is that those combinations are in thousands and thousands of different plants. And so using the right plant for your ailment and condition can actually treat some of the underlying conditions or keep your well-being or balance in life for your healthcare needs. And so when I think about cannabis and how it works because it's a natural ingredient that really restores what our cell cycling system is supposed to look like.
Great. And I'm seeing more of cannabis for use with autism. Can you explain to us a little bit more how that works?
Yeah, definitely. I work with a nonprofit organization called AskGrowers for autism, and it came out of a place of love and for creating a voice for our children. So, as you know, that autism can range from either mild to severe, moderate to severe. And what we wanted to do is that we saw our parents reaching out to different legislators saying that they really need this as a qualifying condition because we needed really a healthcare treatment for children. Even though that, we see it in adults as well, the parents wanted more active, participation with that qualifying condition. So we actually, Alera and Alera Holistic, met with a lot of parents. Now, I will tell you this, Karen, I have a dual role. I'm also the CEO of Women Grow. So Women Grow represents thousands and thousands of women in the cannabis and hemp industries. And I've met many women that became quote unquote refugees, meaning that their children used medical cannabis as a healthcare solution, but they had to go to other states. So they had to split their families to get their children the necessary healthcare treatment in different states like Colorado. So with that, in Pennsylvania, more specifically, there was a law called the Safe Harbor Act, which allowed parents to safely harbor cannabis in to treat their children until they had their own medical program. At that time, we immediately called to action and worked with several different chemical engineers and scientists and produced a product called Hope. We have Hope 1 and Hope 2. And what it does is that it actually services patients, both children and adults with autism.
That's wonderful. And how does like the average parent or person, where do they start to kind of learn about this? I think for some people, they know it's out there, but they don't know sort of how to start educating themselves to being part of their.
Yeah, it's so interesting because usually what we find in the industry is that traditional healthcare has failed patients or they don't even have proper access to it, meaning that, they don't have able to get Medicaid, Medicare, and they're searching for a way to be able to somehow treat themselves with, to make themselves whole again or have that quality of life. So I would first say the first question is that, have you spoken to your healthcare provider? As we know that that's another tricky situation, but as time evolved, there's different platforms where patients know that, okay, if we have a medical program, where can we seek that help? And so each state has a Department of Health, and the ones that have legalized medical cannabis for their ailments and their conditions can actually go and sign up to become a patient and find out more about it. And if in fact it works for them. So that's some of the resources that are available. I know that on my website, the Dr. Chanda website, I host a variety of classes and education portals. But I think what's important is that the patient always makes sure that they're their own healthcare advocate and find a doctor that specializes in cannabinoid medicine to help guide them on this journey.
And what are the major obstacles in getting more medical professionals to see the medicinal use for cannabis? Do you see that changing in like the last several years?
Oh, definitely. So I operate in multiple states and I see it from state to state. But if I think about, what is the problem? Well, less than medical schools actually teach about the endocannabinoid system, which is a cell cycling system that balances out other systems in our body. And because there's that lack of research of how cannabis actually works in conjunction with the endocannabinoid system, doctors really don't know how to recommend medical cannabis to their patients because they've never been educated on that topic. And so when we look at how can we open up this paradigm to, in fact, our healthcare providers, it starts with changing the laws. It starts with allowing us to do more research and opportunities to do research about the uses and the best efficacy of medical cannabis. The other thing I would have to go and pivot back into is education, education, and education. We need to have it in our medical schools. We have to have it also in healthcare programs, period, to talk about the endocannabinoid system and really the cell signaling pathway that needs to be stimulated by cannabinoids.
And could you tell us about the work you did investigating oral diseases and possible treatment options at Colgate-Palmolive Company?
Yeah, definitely. So I undergrad, breast cancer, prostate cancer at Howard University graduate school. And then I decided to enter corporate America and actually produce products that can help with personal care and more specifically oral care. So as a research scientist and more specifically, I'm a cell biologist, I really looking at cell signaling pathways to deal with different diseases or cancer or different disease states, I should say. So at Colgate-Palmolive, I really focus on the oral care aspect and infectious diseases. So from there, I was able to generate two US patents, actually three US patents, 10 world patents, and I was fast tracked to get my MBA in supply chain management there. So it was a really strong, pivotal step in the realities of producing a brand and bringing medicine to patients. But what's interesting is that my heart still lied mostly in education. So it's the business of education and to help others that look like me and act like me and live like me to give them access to the world that I know in the cannabis industry today.
And last week, Hispanic Heritage Month started. Are you planning any special initiatives?
Yes, so what's so interesting, we can't reveal them right now, but if you follow Women Grow on Instagram and Facebook, you'll see some of our podcasts and our special guests that we're going to have with us. We kicked off the celebration internally with our blowout, and we're really celebrating, our heritage. And it is so important that we embrace the fact that the war on drugs impacted brown and Black people across the nation, but also knowing that we have a unique place in the cannabis industry that belongs to us that we're reclaiming now.
And do you think cannabis will be federally legal in like the next 5 to 10 years?
Karen, that's really hard to say, but
I
I
know,
feel like
I know it's a hard question.
I can tell you that I feel very strongly we're headed in the right place. My role and responsibility to advocate for us on the federal level as well as the state level. And so I have continuously put efforts into that, making sure that we have fair social equity programs, social justice reform programs. But I really feel that those two key issues need to be resolved before we just open federal legalization to all, because I feel at that point, expungement of records and release of people that had nonviolent cannabis possessions should be dealt with. And if we legalize too fast, they might be left behind. So it's my goal to make sure we do it with the right steps at the right time to make sure it's done correctly.
And how can we help to kind of improve that social equity?
I think that each state has the right to have a social equity program and actually has the responsibility to make sure Black and Brown people are represented in our industry, period. And so I would say that if there's anything I could do more, intentional, it would definitely be to say legislatively there needs to be a social equity program to give equal access to people of Black and Brown nature, access to the medical cannabis industry.
And you had talked about Women Grow. So how can someone get involved in that?
Oh, we're so excited. I know that we have our annual leadership conference every year that's been sold out for years. We started in Denver in 2014, and it was a bunch of women that came together and said that we really need to empower each other and lift each other's voices up and share the resources to get in the cannabis industry. And so with that, we have always had our leadership conference. I know that right now, because of COVID-19, we haven't been able to have it in the past 2 years, but we're going to jumpstart that off again in 2022 and really help bridge the necessary needs that women of the industry need to get access to in order to have the resources necessary to become small businesses or even very big businesses in the industry. So again, if you follow us on Facebook or on Instagram, Women Grow, we always post up opportunities and ways to jump into the industry. And then hopefully in the next year, we'll start off our leadership conference again.
That's great. And what advice would you give to a woman going to enter the industry?
What's interesting is that I always say personally, wherever you are, I would start by pivoting in that area. So, for example, I've always been in healthcare. So, for me to pivot in the cannabis healthcare business was just an easy lift. I just needed to understand the expertise of my industry. But once I was able to do that, it was really able using my skill sets to continue my growth. So if I think about an accountant, for example, and you really want to get in the cannabis industry, the best way to enter is really to understand the 280E tax law. Because if you can master that, then really you become a specialized firm for cannabis operations all over the nation. And that is what we don't have because this industry just started.
Yeah. And is there anything you want to mention that we didn't touch on?
I know that that cannabis can be a taboo issue and the stigma still is real. It's out there and there's hesitation about getting in the industry. But I want to say from a businesswoman to another businesswoman, we need you here. We need your voice, we need your expertise, and we welcome you into the industry. And I say that with all sincerity. There's less than 27% of women in the cannabis industry, period, today. And I struggle with that because I know that we are the caregivers, the healthcare providers, the small business minded people that we are, and we can be doing so much more. But I understand the stigma might be hard to overcome, but please join us if you're able to. And the second part of that, Karen, is that as a healthcare provider, I know that using cannabis is still taboo on top of that. But I have seen some amazing things. I don't even call it medical marijuana, I call it miracle marijuana because, just seeing the miracles of the cannabis plant and how I've seen it restore health and well being, it's just phenomenal. So if you have an ailment or condition that traditional medicine is not helping you with, please consider cannabis as a first line of defense, not the last.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
No, thank you, Karen, and God bless you. Be safe out there.
You too.